Hey YouTube, coming at you today with some of the darker side of our hobby. Now, sooner or later, if you are a fish keeper and you keep multiple tanks and lots of fish, sooner or later you're going to come on to some of the darker sides of this hobby. It's a great hobby. It's full of exciting and thrilling possibilities, breeding fish, watching fish thrive, learning how to make your fish thrive. But there are some very troublesome parts of our hobby too. You know, the litany is very long. You can go down the list of diseases, aggression killing your fish, poor importation and treatment of fish that produce fish in our tank that just aren't ready to live because they've been so abused. Corporations that decide to make a buck instead of produce a quality product, or introduction of hybrids. The list goes on and on. It's almost as long as the list of great things about this hobby. But in my own personal experience, besides self-inflicted wounds or accidents of nature, one of the most serious things that I have come across in this hobby is Mycobacterium. Mycobacterium wiped out an entire tank full of fish that I had had for many years. And this was Mycobacterium marinum. And the only reason why I know what it was I was so mystified by the deaths of my fish that I sent 3 of them to a fish vet to get him to tell me what it was that killed my fish so that I would know how to treat it. There is no treatment for Mycobacterium. Mycobacterium are just like all bacteria. They're everywhere. They're in the air, they're in the soil, they're in the water, they're everywhere. The problem with them comes when they build up in a tank, and I've recently read D.Walstad's article on them, and I will link you to that article, although I don't think it's available on the regular internet now. There are a few tricks that you can use to find stuff that is no longer available on the internet, and I'll link you to one. Because I think it's critical that everyone that really expects to succeed in this hobby, that really expects to take their hobby to the next step, that wants to expand their skill base, needs to know about this darkest side of the hobby. Mycobacterium are deadly, but in very small numbers in fish that have high immunity. They don't really cause a problem. It's fish that have weakened immunities, i.e. fish in a tank with high nitrates, high nitrites, ammonia, fish in a tank that is not being taken care of properly in the sense of regular vacuuming of the substrate, or in a lot of instances, what will happen is you will import a fish, it will arrive to you, you will quarantine the fish and observe it for a month, You will treat it for bacterias and parasites. And what ends up happening is the fish that you have imported has a built-up immunity to one type of mycobacterium, so it exhibits no symptoms. And yet, your observation of that fish during the month-long quarantine period shows you no issues with it, and so you finally put it in your tank with the rest of your fish. Unfortunately, the rest of your fish may have never been exposed to the type of mycobacterium that new fish is carrying, and so they have no immunity to it. Whereas it's not affecting the fish that you imported and recently added to your tank, it may suddenly affect every other fish in the tank. Bacterial treatment using antibiotics will not stop mycobacterium. One of the few things that will kill mycobacterium is UV light treatment. And as expensive and troublesome as UV light treatment is, there may come a time in every fish hobbyist's experience where UV light is about the only way that they are able to combat this pathogen. Now, D.Walstad's article sheds light on several areas of mycobacterium. She says that the reason why mycobacterium are called myco is because they have a lipid-based, fatty-based armor cell wall around the outside of themselves that allows them to avoid treatment by antibiotics, by bleach, by all the normal methods of sterilization. Mycobacterium survive it. And the one thing that she mentions that is helpful with mycobacterium is alcohol, because alcohol will break down this fatty lipid armor that surrounds these mycobacteria. Scientists use fish to study different things, and they use them in massive quantities. They'll have a whole giant warehouse set up full of tanks that they are using to study different kinds of whatever they're studying, drug interactions, disease interactions, whatever it is that the scientists are studying, they can use fish to study these things. And they have a serious problem with mycobacterium, because once it gets into their system, and usually these systems are set up in a loop so that something that goes in one tank goes in all of the tanks, they almost have to break down their systems and sterilize them to have any real effect on an outbreak of mycobacterium. Mycobacterium will also enter the hobbyist skin through a break in the skin and can give you fish granuloma, and I'm probably mispronouncing that name, but you can look it up or read D.Walstad's article and get the pertinent information about this. It's treatable in humans. It's not, this is called fish tuberculosis, but it is not the same thing as human tuberculosis. That that pathogen is Mycobacterium tuberculosis. So it's not going to give you tuberculosis, but it gives you a fish-related disease, because there are 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 Mycobacterium that really do terrible work in our fish tanks. And part of it is combating the buildup of this bacterium by regular cleaning. But super cleaning a tank is not a way to stop it. In fact, if your tanks are too clean, Mycobacterium will superpopulate because there are no other bacteria in the tank for them to compete with, because it's been cleaned so well. So this is kind of a balancing act. One of the traits of Mycobacterium, because of this fatty cell wall that protects them, this lipid armor that they have, they tend to float to the surface because fat is lighter than water and it floats. So good cleaning of surface scum, biofilm, whatever you care to call it, that soapy looking layer that you see on top of the water in your tank. There are several ways in which you can clean this, and unfortunately saltwater hobbyists have getting old's terrible, we can't remember anything. Reactors that surface skim the biofilm off the surface of tanks, saltwater tanks. So one of the reasons that I am so aware of this issue is because, like I said, I lost a whole 110-gallon tank. And I lost every fish in the tank and only slightly observed anything wrong before they all started dying. And when they started dying, there was nothing I could do to stop it. I had 4 12 to 14-inch clown loaches, Batia loaches, in this tank that I had raised for years and years and years, because at the time clown loaches were something that no one had bred, and I was encouraged by the size and the well-being of my clown loaches, and that I pretty much thought I had 2 males and 2 females left out of the original 6 that I had bought. And I'd been working really hard to raise those fish and keep them in a situation where I thought they might be able to breed. There were several of my line-bred Dempseys in the tank too, and I also had a pair of Bickers in the tank, Pollies. And I was devastated by this loss. It floored me that there was something that I would not recognize nor be able to treat that could wipe out a whole tank full of fish. So, what should a regular hobbyist do? Clean your tanks, clean the surface of your tank in the sense of getting heavy layers of biofilm off the surface, agitate the top of the water. But don't clean your tank so deeply that there are no competing bacteria left in the tank to compete with mycobacteria. Because in the absence of all other bacteria, i.e. treating with antibiotics, mycobacteria grow. Run a UV sterilizer. It doesn't have to be continuous, but it is a very good idea to be able to run a UV sterilizer if needed. And arm yourself with knowledge. Learn as much as you can about this topic. I stress observation over and over and over again. And with careful observation, you can notice a change in your fishes that when a sudden death presents itself, that you might trigger off that perhaps what you've got going on is a mycobacteria infection in your tank. And if not before, then that would surely be the time to add a UV sterilizer to your tank. Quarantine, as valuable as it is, will oftentimes fail to note a fish that is really infected with Mycobacterium. They use, if you have a school of 25 rainbow fish in your tank, and you buy 3 new rainbow fish and put them in a quarantine tank, one suggested method is to take one of the rainbow fish you have in your regular tank and add it to the quarantine tank for the duration of the quarantine. And this can be as much as 3 months in this case. Because if those new fish are infected with a mycobacterium that your tank fish have not developed an immunity to, then in the quarantine tank, those 3 new rainbow fish may survive just fine. But that sentinel fish that you've added out of your regular tank into that quarantine aquarium may well die and show all the signs of Mycobacterium infection. And in that case, you know why. This is a rough subject. It's a scary subject. And yet by forearming and foreknowledging ourselves, you can survive even a Mycobacterium infection. Good luck, YouTube.